Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association podcast called What is Business Development? Now, folks, when it comes down to business development, for decades, sales training and business development training has focused on urgency, persuasion, and closing techniques. But modern buyers have access to information, options, and alternatives at unprecedented speed. Pressure no longer accelerates decisions, it creates resistance. Well, today, folks, we're going to talk about how to get rid of that resistance and be ready for the modern world that everybody's involved in business development. But before we do that, let's talk about another major business development book, and that is the Business Development Body of Knowledge. This is the universal guide for all business developers around the world to speak the same language, understand the tactics, operations, and strategy of business development across the entire customer journey. And once you master that book, you can then get your business development professional certification online at the Global Business Development Association website at gbdassociation.org. Okay, so today, folks, we're going to talk about a new book that's called Stop Selling, Damn It, Why Alignment Wins, Trust Converts, and Pressure Destroys Solid Deals with Nancy K. Coy. Now, this book is just a great angle to look at where we are in modern day business development. And it draws from Nancy's more than 25 years of experience advising founders, operators, and growth-driven organizations. She reveals why the traditional approach to selling often undermines trust and how solving for alignment changes the entire trajectory of a business relationship. Through real-world case studies from venture-backed startups to healthcare systems and executive boardrooms, Nancy demonstrates how disciplined alignment transforms not only individual deals, but entire organizations. Because when clients trust, they convert. And when they trust, they come back. Trust creates alignment. Alignment creates conversion. Alignment keeps clients. The only question remaining is, will you keep selling or will you start solving? Well, folks, let's welcome Nancy K. Coy to the podcast. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here, Tony.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on board here, Nancy. And we always like to start off with getting a good sense of how our guests started in the business development profession and why did you write your book?
Yeah, years of learning and making a lot of mistakes, getting a lot of bruises, and really finding out after years and years of pushing, chasing the yes, and chasing a quota that my clients felt that. And when I stopped pushing and when I started solving, the dynamics changed. My customers had a different level of respect for me. And they kept coming back. So your question was, how I started my career is that, so yeah, I started my career in business development, capital medical equipment sales. And I've actually was honored to found a couple of national tech companies that are in healthcare, dental offices all over the United States. One in particular called Healthcare Finance Direct. It's very well known now. And I sold my interest in that company in April of 2016. But here we were in the middle of this market crash in 2008. And we had all these patients, Tony, that needed care, wanted care, but could not afford it due to inability to pay. So affordability was a huge issue. So where the book really originated was when you're in healthcare and when you go to a doctor's office and they tell you that you have an out-of-pocket balance, it becomes very uncomfortable when it becomes a sales conversation. And doctors, as a general rule, are not great business people a lot of times. And so this was not, so it was just I needed to teach them how not to sell and to get out of that mindset. So that's really where the book originated. But I've done business in literally, so many different sectors and verticals over my career. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah, well, that's great to be able to share all of that wisdom from so many real world businesses that you've engaged with. You know, sometimes folks who write books typically don't have a lot of practical experience. And so it's great for you, not only as a business developer, but also as a business leader. And I think so many business developers eventually move into some sort of C-suite leadership role, or they become a founder of a business. And it's just kind of this natural progression. And it's great to have folks like you who've done both to be able to share your knowledge with the business development community. And again, folks, we're talking about a very fun sounding book name. It's called Stop Selling, Damn It. Why Alignment Wins, Trust Converts, and Pressure Destroys Solid Deals. That's that's probably the funnest titled book I have had on the show so far, Nancy. So, you know, and I like how you're anchoring everything in trust for your book, because when you look at the business development body of knowledge, when I wrote that, you know, I was trying to solve for what's the first principle of business development, and it fundamentally comes down to trust, which goes, you know, way beyond this vague term of trust. It's based on neuroscience that stimulates brain chemicals with purpose, empathy, and truth, and each one of those three trigger a certain brain chemical cocktail that creates this feeling of trust. And so I really applaud you emphasizing that solid foundation for your book. So let's jump into key tactic or takeaway number one from your book that you would like to share with everybody.
Well, the chasing the yes is selling. Solving earns it. And it does take a little bit longer when we're asking that extra question. Some of the key tactics I talk about is servicing the friction. You know, you hear the word friction and you go, I don't want that in a sales or environment or a business development environment. I actually disagree with that. I'm like you. This is an intuition. It's neuroscience. And when we allow people to share where their head is, and I talk about what I call GRIP in the book. It stands for growth, relief, identity, and protection. Typically, people fall into one of those four categories. And if they are looking for growth, you don't want to be offering a solution that is in protection. If you're talking to somebody about growth and they're interested in growing their business, and you talk to them about identity, and there's just so many different buckets. Again, those four buckets that people fall into. We lessen our opportunities and we mitigate the customer a lot of times from moving forward. So again, that's about solving that friction, asking that extra question. We have been taught in sales for years to ask people, are you ready to move forward? And I have a different philosophy than asking, do you want to move forward? I ask, what needs to feel right? Or what are the next steps? And then I call that transferring the ownership. So it is, again, solving, not chasing the yes. It really is solving, again, which earns it. It is about surfacing that friction, asking that extra question that really gets to the heart of why the decision is being made. And then again, making sure that we move the transaction and transfer the ownership to the actual person who's making the decision of what feels right or what would be the right next step for them.
Okay, great. And so you really have to get a grip on your client relationship, your prospect relationship. And GRIP stands for growth, resistance, identity,
Growth, relief, identity, and protection. Yeah.
Okay. Growth, relief, identity, and protection. Okay, great. And so each one of those is basically the mindset that your prospect may be in when you engage with them, right? They're either in a growth mindset, a relief, identity, or protection.
I talked to a CEO last night, and I've known him for a long time because he knows that I've been a CEO as well. And he said, I asked him about what was going on in his sales organization. And you would think that he was really in growth mode. But Tony, when I peeled back the onion and started asking a few extra questions, he's in protection mode. He was not in growth mode. Now, this is a CEO that if you just walked in the door to try to talk to him about opportunities, that really wasn't his big objection or big objective. And so I noticed that right away by asking those questions, surfacing that friction and understanding where he was going. And I've been in that situation too, where I've had clients, especially when you're dealing in tech, you can talk to a client. And again, you may think that they're looking for growth because that's how I think our mindsets are a lot of times in business development. We just think everybody's looking to grow. Sometimes people are looking for relief. Sometimes I've talked to clients before and they've said, I am working late nights. I'm exhausted. My team is staying late. I mean, we've got overtime issues. That person's looking for relief. If I walked in and said, hey, I'm going to bring you a product or service that's going to add more onto your plate, is that person going to move forward? No, they're not. That's what I'm talking about with the grip model.
Okay, so I think we touched on those growth questions, the relief questions, the protection. What about identity? How are you keying into identity? Is that more like a narcissistic thing? They just want to be great. They want all the limelight on them, or what? How do you identify that?
Not necessarily. So I write about a story in the book where there's a CFO, and he had signed off on a acquisition in a hospital system, and it was not a good situation. That it unraveled, completely unraveled, and his job was on the line. So you could think automatically, oh, that's that could be protection. It was kind of identity and protection together, really. But in his case, his name's David, and David was in a situation where his identity, who he was, his position was even being questioned because of the decisions that he was making. So he was not only protecting himself, but he was protecting his identity too. And if you can get into the people that are maybe a little bit narcissistic, but I think more of it isn't as much that as I have a company that has an identity. I need to make sure that I protect that legacy. Like if you were going to offer a product or service to maybe, and I'll just use a name that, most people know, like In-N-Out, like they're going to be really careful about their identity. That's going to be a big deal to them because they have a brand to protect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. All right. I appreciate you covering each one of the elements of the GRIP acronym. That's great. So that's tactic number 1. What's tactic number 2?
So really the biggest, again, probably the biggest tactic in the book would be, again, alignment. That it is so important to align with your clients because what you're trying to do is work smart, not work hard. And in this day and age, in this information highway that we live in, what we're trying to do is establish alignment so that our customers trust us, Tony, so that if there's an issue, they're comfortable coming and telling you what is going on so you can help to solve it. Versus just going to someone else, because what we want to do is to enhance the EBITDA. That is in companies is to stabilize our sales and our repeat sales. Now, sometimes you don't have repeat sales, but it doesn't matter. You still want to be in alignment with people because they will send referrals to you. if they trust you. So that's one of the big tactics in the book.
Yeah, alignment is so critical, and it's alignment, I would say, on purpose. They know, they trust that you can get them from point A to point B.
Absolutely.
And so I think alignment on that purpose. And then, but you're also talking about the overall trust alignment, which includes that empathy where you've demonstrated your ability to understand them and you've delivered consistently, truthfully. And so over time, you're really building upon this trust alignment that delivers ultimately the overall objective of business development. And that is to have referral customers.
Absolutely.
We start off in the business development body of knowledge that business development, the definition is customer and community advocacy that creates corporate growth. And that definition is a double entendre. That means, yes, we advocate for our customers and our community and build that trust. But in doing so, they in turn advocate for us and provide referrals, or they expand the amount of business they do with us. So I love how you really focus on this concept of alignment on trust. Okay, so that's tactic number 2. What about tactic number 3?
Goodness. So again, obviously the trust, the alignment, but one thing that I think we do, it's in business, is as soon as we get a big sale, it's this big high five moment. And I talk a little bit differently. I call it transferring the ownership. And it really is not necessarily, it shouldn't really be as much of a high five moment. Now that doesn't mean that a lot of us have been on commission, and granted, I get all that. But when our clients are so in alignment with us that they can speak to the next steps, that's commitment. That is not just enthusiasm. And we make a lot of mistakes in sales and business development where we hear somebody says, oh, this is great. Oh, this is fantastic. I love the idea. And we mistake commitment for enthusiasm. And what we want to do is transfer the ownership, Tony. We want our clients to be able to articulate the next steps, because when they do that, they're making a commitment. And when people make a commitment, they own it. So it's a way to think about it. And I was talking to a handful of people in healthcare, because I do a lot in healthcare dentistry. And can you imagine going into a healthcare office and they just sold you like a full mouth reconstruction? Let's say, and then you leave the office and they're all high-fiving each other. They just sold you this. How would you feel? Everything they've just done, you've just lost trust in that person. But when we transfer the ownership to somebody else, the person who's buying, and they can articulate what the right next steps are, that's transferring that ownership. And that is powerful. You don't lose transactions when you do that.
Yeah, that's a very powerful imagery that you shared with us. Is you just finished paying for a very expensive dental treatment, and as soon as you're leaving, you can see them high-fiving inside. It feels like it was entirely transactional for them
100%.
And didn't have your best interest in mind. So give me an example.
It's also the same thing when you buy a car, though. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're purchasing. If people feel like if somebody feels like you just got over on me, I've learned over the years, Tony, those are not good deals. Those are not deals that last. Those are those are deals that churn. I prefer to have deals that I can count on, because that's a lot better for my companies to be able to say, that's a customer that I can count on. That customer's not going anywhere, because we're in total alignment and they know that I have their best interest at heart. I'm not chasing this.
So Nancy, help me understand here. So in kind of this this dental scenario that I think so many people can relate to, what would be the outcome? What would you, instead of the high-fiving, is it the patient who is then providing referrals? Or walk me through how that dental office would try and achieve the outcome you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking to a patient, of course, you have HIPAA and all these different, it's the extreme. But when a patient is going through that exercise, you're going to stick a needle in my mouth and you're going to cut me and you're going to hurt me. That's what that person is thinking. When you are able to transfer that ownership and the patient is on board that I trust this doctor, I trust this team, I trust that you're going to take care of me, there's a different level of empathy. And I guarantee you those conversations are talked about around the dinner table. They're talked about when people go out with their friends, because that's a big procedure. That's a major issue. It's just like buying a car. Somebody sees you buy a brand new car. Are you going to talk about it? Well, a lot of people post about this great car that I just purchased. And I had a great experience with this dealership. The guy or gal that I worked with, they listened to me. They understood what I wanted. And I got the car that I absolutely love. And I'm really happy about it. Again, it really doesn't have as much to do with the product or service. It has to do with the treatment of the transaction.
Yeah, I really like that. And it's funny you mentioned the scenario with the car, because my best friend last night, I was over at his house and he just finished doing a test drive of a vehicle he plans to buy today. And he spent probably 30 minutes showing me the website, video that he took while he was test driving the car. I mean, so that customer experience was incredible, or prospect experience, I should say, was incredible. And actually, in the business development body of knowledge, there's science that shows that the prospect experience is way more powerful than the actual customer experience after they've made a purchase, believe it or not. And that carries through the entire relationship. They'll never forget that first moment they experienced that introduction to your product. And Nancy, I'm sure folks will not forget their first introduction to your book in this podcast, which is Stop Selling, Damn It. Why alignment wins, trust converts, and pressure destroys solid deals. And Nancy, I'll just summarize the 3 tactics we talked about today. One is, hey, get a grip on the situation. Find out and engage your prospects to find out what mindset they're in. Are they in a growth mindset, a relief mindset, an identity mindset, or are they just in plain protection mode? And then once you have that, then you align yourself based on trust. Can you get them from point A to point B? And have you demonstrated your ability to do that empathetically and truthfully in the past? And then finally is really focusing on the overall objective of business development, which is to build those long-lasting referral-based relationships with your prospects and your customers, where they ultimately become your champions because you are a champion for them. Nancy, did I miss anything that we should talk about?
No, I think you've nailed it. The book is fast. It's a really fast read. Fortunately, so far we have 55-star reviews. And I'm excited that companies are asking me to come and speak about this, because this is a culture, Tony. This is a culture change, because again, so for so many years we've been chasing that quota, but in today's world, the quota can a lot of times mean churn. Yes, we might save the quarter, we might save for a minute, but a lot of times those deals don't last. And
that short-term mindset does not win over time.
No.
And so, having this long-term mindset, getting a grip on things, and just stop selling, damn it.
Stop selling.
Well, Nancy, how can folks connect with you, follow you, and engage with your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, at Nancy K. Coy. You can find me at nancykcoy.com. I'm also the CEO of finverified.ai. So you can find me there as well. But I'm pretty accessible. So would love to connect with other people and help them stop selling and start solving.
Yeah, there we go. Stop selling and start solving. And we solved a lot today, Nancy. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with our community. And thank you for everything you've done for the business development profession.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.